and welcome to another episode of FooBar. Today we are continue building an Amplify application using CDK. So in a previous video that I leave you here or here, I don't know, I show you how to deploy an Amplify application using CDK. So we will build the backend using CDK, and that will generate an Amplify application with a GitHub repo for the whole frontend that the frontend developers doesn't need to know anything about AWS. You really like that video, so now I'm going to do a second part and later on a third part, and if you want more, I will do more parts, but you let me know. So in this video, what we are going to do is to continue building that application. One thing that is very handy when we use Amplify is all the libraries that come within. One of the libraries is authentication. We add Cognito, we create Cognito when we use Amplify. From the CLI, we do Amplify add auth, and that will generate the Cognito user pool, the Cognito identity pool, and the client, and that will do all the setup for us. And then we can use a client library, in this case for React, that is the app I'm going to be using, to create with 1 or 2 lines of code in your React application this signing process. So in this video, what I want to show you is how you can create a Cognito user pool, identity pool, and a user pool client from CDK. So that's something new. I will show you how you can, again, connect that to your Amplify application using environmental variables, as we have been doing. I will show you how you can have a local environment, because this application, because it's using these environmental variables that are put when the application is deployed in the cloud, doesn't work locally. So I will show you how you can get your front end working locally. I will show you how you can then also put this as a whole pipeline, and it works automatically for your front-end developers and for your back-end developers. So let's get started with the demo. But before showing you the demo, you are going to watch my demo and have not liked my video yet. What you're expecting? Go and like that video. Now we can continue. So let's go to the demo and see what we can do. As always, I will start with an empty project. I could cut the project that we have built in the previous episode, but I want to build a full application here with Amplify. I will show you what we are going to do with GraphQL in the next video, so stay tuned. But in this video, we are just going to add authentication only. So I create a new project where I'm going to put the backend and the client together, so then I can upload it to GitHub and you have both. In the backend, we are going to initialize a CDK application using TypeScript as our language. Pick the one you like. So let's fast forward until it finishes initializing. Good. Our backend now is ready. We can open it in Visual Studio Code, and there we can go to the stack and we can start building our Cognito. Before that, I will do some imports. I will be using AWS Cognito modules and also the Amplify modules. Later on in following videos, we will add more things. But for now, those are the 2 modules that we are going to do. The Cognito module will allow us to create the identity pool, user pool, and client. And the Amplify will create us the Amplify application. So I install those libraries in my project, and then we can start building. So the first thing I'm going to do is to put the Amplify application. This is exactly how we did it in the previous video. I will have a repository name and an owner and the GitHub token that is stored in our secrets. If you don't know how to do all that, go and watch that video. And there I go in more deep. So then I have that, and the next thing I'm going to do is configure the branch in which this Amplify application is going to be deployed in that repository. So now I need to create a client. So I will create a React application with the name client. It will be again in this folder that we created at the beginning, and I will fast forward until the internet finished downloading in my computer. Now the internet has finished downloading in my computer and we have a React application in the client folder. Good. We can basically deploy this, push this into GitHub, create a repository and all those things. And don't forget to create a repository with the name of the repository of your Amplify application. So I will fast forward basically until the point where we have this application pushed into GitHub, because you all know how to do this. If you don't, go and watch the other video that I show it in step by step. So let's fast forward until then. So now our client is in GitHub. With that name of the repository that we put. I create this as a private repository. This is not the repository where you will get in the code. For getting the code, go to check the description box of this video. There you will find the repo with the client and also the backend. So now we have our thing in GitHub, so we can continue working on the backend for a little longer. Then the next thing we need to do is to create our Cognito resources. So this is the new part, so let's go step by step and build those Cognito resources with CDK. You will see how simple it is. The first resource that we are going to build is the Cognito user pool. And here, basically, we are using a level 2 constructor for CDK. So this comes with a lot of defaults that we are going to assume they are good. If you want to know how to use these constructors, there's a link for this in the description box. But basically, we will set up some kind of attributes that we are interested in. The first one is the self-sign-up enable. This will allow users to create an account within the tool that they're using, so they don't need to go through another process. Then the auto verify, we want to send an email to these users to verify the email, and they get a code and they can type it in the signing process. And then we will use the email as the username. You can do username, that's up to you. So this is the first thing. I will just put another name so I can find it in my chaos of AWS account, Amplify CDK user pool, and then those 3 attributes. The next thing we want to do is to create the user pool client, and this is used for web applications, so we will just give this default and pass the user pool that we just created. We need one when we are going to use this user pool from any applications. And then we are going to create the identity pool. So if you don't know anything about Cognito and you're like, what is all this? I give you a video where we talk with Sebastian Stockman about this. The link is somewhere in here and also in the description box. After watching this, you can go there and you can learn more identity pools, user pools, and all that. But basically, user pools is the user directory where usernames and passwords are stored and some user data. Identity pools is where the permissions for AWS resources are given. So you can have your user pool in other services like Facebook, Google, other providers, and then you can use identity pools to give permissions to the users to access the AWS resources. So that's why there are 2 different entities. So we need both because we are managing our users with Cognito, and also we are giving permissions with Cognito. So when we create an identity pool, we are using a level 1 constructor. And this is something CDK doesn't have a level 2 constructor yet, so we are using a level 1 constructor, but it's not that hard. We have to give some parameters. The first one is to allow unauthenticated identities. This means that we can have users that don't have an account registered, doesn't have an account, for example, stored in a user pool. This is great for giving permissions to AWS resources when the users are not signed in. I will say true, just in case during this demo I want to do something and then I don't want to change it later. Then we need to give the Cognito identity providers the client ID that we just created and the user pool name that we just created earlier. And these are only parameters that we need to pass to have an identity pool that is working. So one thing to have in mind, and we will not need it now, but it will happen later. When we are doing these identity pools, there will be roles created within this identity pool. We'll have an authorized role for this pool, and there is where we are giving the permissions of what people or users registering and getting credentials, or what kind of role they are going to assume when they are using the identity pool. So that's for later. For example, if you watch my videos on location-based service, I'll leave you the link in the description box. I'm changing those and I'm giving permissions in those roles. But for now, we don't need anything. This is what it is. So good. Now we have the user pool, the client, and the identity pool. We're done. The next thing we need to do is to pass these values that we just created from the user pool, the identity pool, and the client to the Amplify application, because the Amplify application needs to know this in order to use them. So we are going to use the environmental variables setup that I showed you in the previous video of this series, where we pass everything as environmental variable. Everything is dynamic. So we are going to pass 3 environmental variables. Well, there will be 4. There is also the region, and there we have the identity pool that we are getting from the identity pool.ref. Then the user pool ID that we are getting from the user pool ID variable. And then we are going to pass the user pool ID, client ID that we are also getting from the user pool client. And finally, the region that basically we say this region, and this gives us it's the region where this is deployed. So that's pretty neat. We don't have anything in the cloud yet, so we need to deploy this. That's all we need to do. So we save this file. So then we can go to our terminal and run npm run build to build everything, and then we can deploy it to the cloud. For deploying to the cloud, CDK deploy will deploy all this shebang into our cloud account that we have configured, and then we are ready to work on our client. So I will fast forward until this is deployed in the cloud and we can work on the client. So if we want to validate that everything has been created, we can go within our AWS account and go to CloudFormation, for example, find the stack that we just deployed. In this case, it's called backend stack. And there go to the resources and see which resources were created. Because I have this page so zoomed in so you can see it properly, it's very hard to navigate this page. But believe me, there is an identity pool, a user pool, a client, and an Amplify application. Go and check it yourself when you deploy this. You can also go to Cognito and check these things out. You can go to Amplify and verify everything. So if we go to Amplify, we can see that there is a new application created. It has a build queue, and we can run that build, and we can see that it's deploying the basic create React application. I will leave it there deploying while we do something else. So now let's move into the client and start working on it, because our client doesn't have anything yet. So I will go into the client and start adding some interesting things. The first one is the Amplify YAML. The Amplify YAML, as we talked in the previous video, is the build script for Amplify, and if we have environmental variables, we need to use this YAML in order to pass the environmental variables from the Amplify application into the front-end code, and we do that with these commands. If you want to know more, check that video out. The next thing we are going to do is to install some libraries, because I need them in order to make this thing work. We need to install the Amplify UI React that will give us the library for authentication. We need to install Amplify because we are going to use it as well, and I will install Bootstrap and a library called mcmd, and you will see more about that in a second. Let's install all this shebang and go and check our application that it's just finished deploying. We can go and click in that link and we have the React app. So we are sure that this is working. So now we can go into our app.js and start changing it. I will just paste an app that I have. It doesn't have any complicated thing. It's just a very simple application that has a header and a login application. So it's very, very simple. For that, I'm going to be using Amplify. I'm going to import the library, and then I will also import the libraries from the React components from Amplify to do the authentication, sign in and sign out. And then I need to create, and I have not created, a file called Amplify AWS config, and here is where we are going to put the configuration of our Amplify project. So when you are working with Amplify traditionally using the AWS CLI, automatically Amplify will create a file called AWS export.js. And this is a file auto-generated by Amplify that you cannot touch. And in here you will find all the variables that are coming from your backend into your Amplify application. So I will simulate that using the AWS config file. And in this file, I will write some information that is understandable for Amplify. So I will create a JSON here, a JSON object or an object itself that has this format. And the format here is very important because this is will be consumed by the Amplify configuration. So here I have an auth element, and inside the auth element there is the identity pool ID, region, identity pool region, user pool ID, and user pool web client ID. And you can see that all of them are linked to an environmental variable. So when this gets deployed into the cloud, these environmental variables will get populated using that Amplify YAML build script. It will build the application correctly. So this is a very important file. Then we will use the amplify.configure to consume that file, and that will configure Amplify as if we were generating it ourselves, the backend in the CLI. The next, I'm copying just this simple app that I told you that it has a small header with a sign up button, and it has a main application that is wrapped through the Amplify Authenticator tags. That is these UI components that Amplify give us to have a signing application, like signing form and create an account form. So that's great. So now I can do npm start and see what happens. So ooh, I'm getting an error. And why is that? Well, that's because our Amplify config file is full of environmental variables that we don't have locally. We don't have those files locally, so we cannot test this locally. And this is a pain because when you're working with client development, you want to be able to do these fast iterations and being able to do all these things locally. So we need to pre-populate these variables in a way in our local environment. So for that, I will create a file called m.local, and this is a local file. You don't commit it anywhere because here you will have the real values of your backend. So this is for only local testing. You don't put it in anywhere. You don't put it in GitHub. You have it locally, and whenever you are testing locally, you need to populate this with the real values of the environmental variables that are in the Amplify application. So if something changed, then you need to keep on updating it. But these are things that don't change very often, so this is great. So now you can have all these variables fill in with the values that are in the Amplify environmental variables. So these are the real values that CDK is generating and putting in here. So now we have this local file. So now we need to use it. And for that, I will create a new start script that is filling those values for us. So I will start this start local that is using this library that I installed, the mcmd, and is passing that environmental file configuration with the local, and then I'm going to do start. So this will populate these variables for us in the Amplify console. So this is a great way to test locally and then have a very dynamic backend and everything working in your backend when you deploy to all your different stages, your front end. So I really like this approach. So if I go back, npm start, and then we refresh, I can show you that this is working, this is what it happens, and all of this is connected to the backend in the cloud, the Cognito user pool, and everything is in the cloud, but the application is locally. So I create my account and then I confirm this account and I log in. I can see the sign out button that is provided by the Amplify thing. And basically now we can push this to GitHub and see what happens. I add everything into GitHub and then I do commit and I push it. So after we push this to GitHub, we can go and check our Amplify application, and you see that it's provisioning and the application is starting to do the cycle again, the provision, build, deploy, and verify. So I will fast forward until this is finished and I can show you how this looks. So now it's done. I click the link that is there and open another window and we can see that there is this signing. I will put the same username and password I just created because it's exactly the same environment that I had localhost, and I can log in. So that's it for this video. In the next video, I will show you how to do GraphQL. And if you want to see more things related to CDK and Amplify together, let me know in the comment box below, because this is a series I'm super excited about. This is something I'm learning with you, because these are two things I've been thinking like how to make them better together. So let me know in the comments what you would like to see, how you would like me to integrate it, where you would like me to take all these things. And I see you in the next episode of FooBar.